قصتنا اليوم عن البحر الأحمر. هذا الممر المائي ليس مجرد ممر تمر من خلاله 14% من التجارة العالمية، بل أصبح مؤخرا ساحة نفوذ وصراعات إقليمية، أمن البحري، التجارة العالمية والطموحات الإقليمية. كيف تنظر واشنطن إلى هذا الممر المائي؟ لذلك نحن هنا في العاصمة واشنطن لمقابلة السيد إيلان بيرمان، وهو باحث في مركز American Foreign Policy Council، وهي مؤسسة فكرية تعنى بالسياسات الخارجية الأمريكية وتحليلها، وتساعد صناع القرار في صك السياسات في الولايات المتحدة. نتعرف عليه.
Welcome.
Mr. Élan.
Good to see you.
Yeah, good to see you. Nice to meet you.
No, thank you for coming.
Yeah.
Lots to talk about.
Thank you so much. Let's talk about Red Sea.
And it's interesting because it's an area that Washington doesn't usually focus on, but now we have to. First of all, because of the Israeli recognition of Somaliland, but also because of the broader security frame that exists, because of the Houthis in Yemen, because of how much the Red Sea is integral to Saudi development. All roads lead to the Southern Gulf. All roads lead to East Africa.
صوماليلاند كانت تطالب بدولة منذ حوالي عام 1991. لماذا قررت إسرائيل الآن الاعتراف بصوماليلاند؟
I think because there's a geopolitical opportunity to do that. If you've looked over the last year, the regional shifts and also the shifts in international affairs has really created an opening. On the one hand, the Israelis are grappling with the after effects of the Gaza war, where you saw a growing international coalition that was arrayed against it. And at the same time, there is a very positive attitude from Washington, and also an opportunity to reactivate alliances like the Abraham Accords, which include an African component, and allows Israel to change the conversation and to really capitalize on opportunities as they arise. The second, I think, important consideration is that Somaliland is strategically very important because of its proximity to Yemen, because Israel is still grappling with the threat posed by Yemen's Houthi rebels, and having access to Somaliland, having the ability to look across the Red Sea and be closer to the Houthis may be a potential deterrent for Houthi action against Israel itself, and may be a potential platform for action if circumstances allow, if circumstances require it.
هل تعتقد أن هناك صفقة ما تشبه تلك الصفقة التي تمت ما بين المغرب وإسرائيل في الصحراء الغربية؟
It's an interesting idea because Morocco was the last entrant into the Abraham Accords, and there's a model there, a model where Morocco gained Israeli recognition, confirmation of sovereignty over the Western Sahara in exchange for Israel obtaining normalization and economic benefits. And so I think there's a deal similar to that that can be struck in the case of Somaliland. Somaliland very much wants international recognition, wants to break out of this long-standing status where it is factually independent, but legally it's not recognized as such. And so I think the leadership of Somaliland understands very well that this is an opportunity to do that. And the Israeli leadership understands that there are tangible things that they can gain if they play this game.
هل تعتقد أن هناك دول قد تخطو هذه الخطوة التي خطتها إسرائيل في الاعتراف بصوماليلاند؟
I think it's an interesting question, and most of the media attention, at least so far, has been focused on the countries that oppose it. The Arab League made a statement, Qatar and Turkey have made public statements, but what's really interesting are the countries that haven't said anything. The Emirates has been quiet. The Emirates is part of the Arab League, so it has a complicated position, but the Emirates is also a partner in the Abraham Accords, and so its silence speaks volumes. Morocco also has not said anything with regard to opposing this recognition. So I think we're beginning to see a very interesting strategic alignment where partners of Israel are coalescing together. And it's not just the Abraham Accords countries, but increasingly countries like Somaliland as well. And so watching those next steps, which countries also agree to this alignment, becomes very important. For the calculus in Washington is, I think, very different because it supports the initiative, it supports the concept of the initiative, and American officials have said so. But at the same time, the calculation for the White House is much more complicated because the White House is seeking to engage Turkey and Qatar on things like the International Stabilization Force in Gaza. Turkey and Qatar oppose Somaliland recognition. It has equities with a lot of the countries in the Arab League that have opposed this recognition. So the American approval informally, but failure to approve formally, I think reflects very much that calculation.
I think there is a bill in the Congress before.
Yes, no, that's right. And it's useful to remember, particularly for the viewers, that the White House casts a very long shadow on American foreign policy, but it's not the only actor. The Congress actually has a very important role to play. And in Congress, support for Somaliland's independence has actually been stronger than in the executive branch, in the White House. And so what you have is this very interesting drift on the part of the White House to a place where Congress already is, where there is support for the U.S. taking a more significant position in the future.
لا يمكن أبداً الحديث عن صوماليلاند بمعزل عما يحدث الآن في الضفة الأخرى من البحر الأحمر في اليمن تحديداً. كيف تفسر الأحداث التي تحصل الآن في جنوب اليمن تحديداً وكيف تفاقم الخلاف ما بين أعضاء التحالف ما بين السعودية والإمارات؟
It's interesting. There's obviously a contest, ideological and also practically in political terms, between Riyadh and Abu Dhabi for regional primacy. I think a lot has changed in this context in the last year. It was, at least initially, before the Gaza war, it seemed like Saudi Arabia had the upper hand. But now, because of the Saudi position on pathway to a Palestinian state, on a cooling of Saudi attitudes towards normalization with Israel, I think the Emirates are feeling that the dynamism is on their side. And this is a really interesting strategic play on the part of the Israelis as well, because Israel with access to Somaliland and Israel in terms of partnership with the Emirates, and therefore potentially the ability to project force out of Somaliland into the Red Sea, de facto makes Israel a guarantor for maritime commerce in the Red Sea. That's hugely significant because the economic disruption that was caused over the last 2 years by the Houthis has added billions upon billions of dollars to consumer costs, right, downstream consumer costs. So in this move, Israel has very deftly at least started the conversation about having it be potentially a guarantor of security and stable commerce in the Red Sea. That is a tremendous advance.
في السابق كتبنا مقال في الحرة حول حل الدولتين في اليمن. هل تعتقد أن هذا الحل قد يكون هو الأسلم للملاحة البحرية في البحر الأحمر وبحر العرب؟
I think so, and I think you're absolutely right to raise the question of the two-state solution, because this is a concept that I think makes a lot of strategic sense in terms of American interests as well. There's this old saying in English that sometimes to make a problem smaller, you have to make it bigger. And over the last 2 years, we've tried to approach the Houthis in Yemen as a counterterrorism problem, and we haven't been very successful. But if we recast the situation in Yemen as a sovereignty question, as a governance question, and begin to emphasize a more constructive partner in the south of the country, I think it has the real potential to limit the reach and the effectiveness and the destabilizing capabilities of the Houthis. I think the issue, at least in the American political discourse, the issue of two-state solution is confined to the Israeli-Palestinian question. It very rarely comes up in the context of Yemen. And so what's needed first is an understanding of what that would actually mean, an understanding of what it would look like for Yemen to be divided or redivided, right, as it was in the past, and what the implications would be for the United States. I think if there's a better case that's made for a two-state solution in the context of Yemen, I think you'll see support in Washington grow.
السعودية عارضت بشدة اعتراف إسرائيل بصوماليلاند. كيف ترى السعودية هذا الاعتراف؟
So it's very interesting because I think you're absolutely right. There are hard choices that are coming for the Saudis. Because on the one hand, the Saudi attitudes towards normalization with Israel have cooled. The Saudis have equities with Somalia. But on the other, you have a situation where the Saudi Vision 2030, the Saudi concept of post-oil economy, depends very heavily on Red Sea commerce, Red Sea tourism and development. And the presence of a stabilizing force on the banks of the Red Sea, one that can constrain the Houthis in Yemen, is a net positive. So I don't think the decision has been made in Riyadh yet, but these are the competing impulses that they're juggling at the moment.
هل يمكن أن تصبح أرض الصومال منصة مراقبة إسرائيلية في البحر الأحمر؟
Well, one of the interesting things that you've seen come out of Israel and specifically the Israeli intelligence community in recent months is growing concern that the Houthis have essentially jumped the Red Sea, that the Houthis have jumped over the Red Sea and begun at least tactical, possibly even strategic contacts with groups like Al-Shabaab. And so the Israeli military presence, potentially, in Somaliland, at least the greater access to Somaliland, can also be interpreted as a forward security play by Israel that's very concerned about the expanding capabilities of the Houthis. Iran has proven, I think, to be a very effective force in terms of destabilization. It's much easier to destabilize than it is to build. But at the same time, the Iranians are having enormous problems of their own. There are, as we're recording this, there are protests that are taking place in Tehran and in other cities because the Iranian economy is in freefall. The Iranian rial has devalued to such a point that ordinary Iranians have lost the vast majority of their savings. This is a fundamental threat to the Iranian regime. And even though the Iranian regime is expansionist and is adventurist, right, all politics are local. So I think, in principle, the Iranians may act. But at least for the moment, I would think the Iranians are preoccupied.
الرئيس طيب أردوغان قبل ساعات أصدر تصريحا يتحدث فيه عن هذا الاعتراف الإسرائيلي بصوماليلاند. كيف ترى تركيا هذا التحالف، دعنا نسميه التحالف ما بين إسرائيل وصوماليلاند، وقد نقول أيضا إثيوبيا والإمارات؟
Well, it's interesting, and Erdogan is I think, from the Israeli context, an enormously problematic actor because at the same time he has very good relations with the Trump administration, but he has also emerged as the most strident anti-Israeli voice. And so they're worried about a close-in Turkish presence in Syria, they're worried about a close-in Turkish presence in the Gaza Strip, potentially. So the Somaliland question, I think, is a really interesting partial answer to Israel's Turkey problem. Because the way Turkey has depicted Israel in recent weeks is that Israel is unbound, Israel is a destabilizing force in the region, Israel is sort of not controlled, it's not constrained. By showing that Israel is a stakeholder in sub-Saharan Africa, that Israel has the potential to serve a constructive role in Red Sea security, that really, I think, takes away at least some of the fire from Erdogan's statements. And I'm not anticipating a massive shift in opinion, either in the Middle East or in Africa, but I think it does make it a bit more of a complicated argument to sell for the Turks.
من وجهة نظر مصرية، رأينا ردة الفعل المصرية حول ما حصل في صوماليلاند أكبر بكثير مما كان يحدث في اليمن، رغم أن الحوثي يشكل أيضا خطر على تجارة الاقتصاد المصري بحد ذاته بحكم قناة السويس.
It's a good question. The Egyptian passivity at the height of Houthi activism was always puzzling to me, precisely because the Egyptian economy is so brittle and because Egypt relies so heavily on maritime commerce. And so I think it's an open question. It's not clear. The Egyptians have also seen a shift in their foreign policy as a result of the Gaza war. They have become more in opposition to Israel, to Israeli security prerogatives. So it may be simply a function of that. But I think in the longer term, greater stability in the Red Sea rebounds to Cairo's benefit, I think very tangibly.
Thank you so much.